All right, folks, we are live for an episode of Remodelers on the Rise. Remodelers on the Rise. This one is a little different, going down a little different vein of marketing and um, just what you can do with your business to position you as an expert. Curtis Lawson, Curtis, tell everybody hello.
Hey there.
Hey there. Now I am feeling a little inferior. I got my little headset on. I got this microphone. I got this background. There's a window there. Curtis is stinking got a professional podcast studio. He can grab his phone. Oh, you don't like that blue color in the lights? He could change that. He's got beautiful lighting against that. Very impressive. And that's what we're actually going to talk about today. Curtis, yes, he runs Crafted Custom Homes. There he goes, changing the lights. Oh, it's red. Do red. I feel like that's good on brand with the Remodelers on the Rise
Oh,
red.
okay, just for you.
Yeah,
There we go.
ooh, that looks nice.
Yeah.
Crafted Custom Homes. He is a custom home builder. He is a remodeler. He does that. And then I've gotten to know him through Remodelers community and seen his name. And then I noticed, he's starting up this little podcast called Your Project Shepherd. And I listened to a few episodes and thought he would be a wonderful guest on the podcast. Is this something other remodelers should consider? You are a remodeler who is serving in your market. What about you becoming a podcast host, kind of hosting the party, if you will? Interesting thought. That's what we're going to talk about today. Curtis, tell us a little bit about yourself and who you are and what you do. And then we'll get into where did this idea of starting a podcast come from?
Sure. So I own Crafted Custom Homes and Renovations, and we are based in Houston, Texas. We are a design build company, and we do about 50-50 new construction and remodeling. And we do projects from whole house remodels, additions, all the way down to a kitchen and a bath remodel. As long as somebody's willing to kind of buy into our process, our design process, and sees the value in what we do, we don't mind doing projects of all sizes. That typically means we don't do real small projects, but right now we have a master bathroom remodel going, and they wanted good quality, a high level of project management, and it's an aging in place type situation, or rather a kind of a handicap situation with a gentleman in a wheelchair. So we're doing some modifications to their home for that. So that type of project is great too, but we typically focus on bigger projects.
Got it. How long have you been in business for?
For about, I guess this year will be 19 years, 2004.
Excellent. And we were just talking right before I clicked start. I said, and life good, everything good. And you said, well, we're doing some college visits. We've got
Yep.
our older kids. And you think about 19 years in business. Wait a minute. Our kids are almost in college. Those people that said, hey, be careful, time flies. They are not joking around, are they?
Right. Yeah, I've got three. I got three daughters, and the oldest one's going to be starting college in the fall, and the second one's just 1 year behind her. So we're deep into that.
Exciting. So this idea of a podcast, where did this come about? Talk about just kind of the backstory of this.
Sure. So I actually have a separate company from Crafted that I've had for about 2 years, and it's called Shepherd Construction Advisors. And Shepherd is actually the entity that's producing the podcast. Your Project Shepherd, yourprojectshepherd.com is the website for that. So that's where the title came from. So just to give you a little backstory on where Shepherd came from, probably like a lot of the guys in the group who are listening, I get asked a lot of questions by friends and family, and just, when people know you're in the business, they ask you questions about the process and, hey, I'm having a problem with this, or my buddy's getting raked by a builder over here. Can you help? What's your advice or whatever? And so I kept seeing people having the same repetitive problems, and usually it's kind of a lack of a process, lack of choosing a good builder. So people make the same mistakes over and over. And so I kind of saw an opportunity in the market to have another consulting company. And so Shepherd does owner's representation work and kind of general construction consulting. So if somebody's having a problem, they'll hire us to maybe step in and help straighten that problem out. Ideally, we're involved from the very beginning, and we're involved kind of on the design side as well, kind of overseeing the architect and the builder and the designer and everything. More often than not, though, we get hired after there's a problem because people don't think they need it until they need it. So Shepherd is just kind of focused on helping people. That's really been my heart, is to help people who are having problems with their projects. And so because we've kind of become known for doing that, a lot of architects will refer us on projects that they see, some of their clients are having issues. And then some other consultants in the area, some forensic consultants and attorneys and things like that will refer us to help with their projects. So the podcast, to answer your question, the podcast came around because I keep seeing these same mistakes. And I said, let's start this venue to kind of teach people the right way to undertake a project. Here's how you choose a builder. Here's how you choose an architect. Here's how you go through the design process. It's kind of a teaching tool.
Interesting. And I think that even if people aren't saying, I'm going to start a podcast, what he just mentioned there is something that all of us should be thinking about. All remodelers should be thinking about. A huge role that all of you play is to guide and to teach people the process. It's not every day that people do major home remodeling projects or custom home projects. And so many things can be helped by teaching and guiding and, might I say, shepherding people through. So the questions that people have and the teaching that all of you do, if you've said it once, you've said it 100 times. You teach on all of these topics of the importance of upfront design and upfront development and making your selections upfront, and how you have to be very careful in who you select and the questions to ask. You guys are always talking about those types of things. So Curtis, what you're doing is kind of saying, look, I'm already talking about these things. What if I captured all of these aspects of teaching, put it into podcast form, did interviews, and now I have something that is going to long term be something that prospects are able to view. Somebody reaches out to me, I can guide them to the podcast that I'm recording. There's no like and trust that can be built through that. So even if you just create videos or do audios related to teaching something, that should be a takeaway for a lot of folks listening. But you kind of said, all right, I'm going to really devote resources and time to this and do it right. Do you like listening to podcasts? Like, why did you go the podcast route?
Yeah, I enjoy listening to podcasts. So in the mornings,
your favorite podcast is Remodelers on the Rise. Is that what you said?
Yeah, every day.
Okay.
Every morning, I wake up and listen to you every morning.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, so in the mornings when I'm just going for a walk around the neighborhood, exercising, I always have a podcast going. I've got 5 or 6 in rotation, and I just I get good ideas from listening to podcasts. Yeah. If I'm out for a walk or a jog, I'm constantly like stopping, pulling my phone out, and taking notes on an idea that popped into my head from listening to somebody else's.
Yep.
It's just a great way to learn.
So kind of walk through the steps that you've kind of taken. Maybe give a little bit of, all right, I had this idea. Here's kind of the way I started it. Here's kind of how I thought through the type of content that I wanted to deliver. Walk us through that a little bit.
Sure. Well, as far as starting a podcast, you can make it as easy or as hard as you want it to be. I tend to go all in and go overboard on things anyway. So that's where this, the studio grew from. But, you can make this as easy as you want it to be. All you have to have, is this, your phone is a mobile podcast studio. Yeah. You can step it up and plug a mic into it, but this is really all you need for podcast and video. So getting started can be really simple. In fact, the first season, which is currently being released right now, we're doing 2 episodes a week. I've got 16 episodes in the first season recorded. They were all done in the room next door in my office, and it was very budget. I had a GoPro camera that I had laying around, and I used the GoPro. I just bought a couple decent microphones for $70 a piece, and a couple of Amazon studio lights for $50 a piece, and that was my setup. And I just recorded it into my computer. So you can get started really cheaply. I just decided that I enjoy doing this. I decided to kind of take it up a notch. So I spent some money to build this studio. I upgraded my equipment for second season and beyond. Gotcha. To me, it's kind of a longer term investment. But as far as the kind of the ideas go for it, I started off for the first season saying, okay, if somebody wants to build a house, remodel a house, whatever, and they don't know anything, let's just start from the beginning on, how do you, if you're building, how do you choose a lot? How do you choose an architect? How do you choose a builder? How do what are all the steps that I have to go through? And then, so I just kind of made a sequence of episodes on those different topics. And then I wrote a story to go along with it. And the story ties in with each episode. And the story is kind of a hook to pull people in. It's a story about a fictional couple, Brian and Heather, who want to build a house, and they kind of make every mistake known to man. They buy some house plans on the internet. They buy a lot without knowing the deed restrictions and the zoning and stuff like that. They hire the cheap architect. They make every mistake that you can make, and then eventually they do find a person to kind of guide them through to the end. And so that plays in well with our episodes as they walk through all the steps. We kind of talk about the mistakes they made.
Gotcha. Again, I'm just trying to make this very applicable because I think there's a big gap between, oh, this is kind of interesting idea and actually implementing something like this.
Sure.
But what you just described of what are all the different phases and points and things that people need to consider and think about. That's kind of how you started your season one, is let's go just step by step through all of the different elements that people need to think about. And some of these that you're interviewing some of your trade partners and colleagues, some of them you're doing solo. And then, the big thing that you're also putting effort into is, how do I make this interesting, compelling? How do I add a story element to it? I want to ask you more about that here in a second. So you you talk about stinking 5P, proper preparation prevents poor performance. You've already got all of those done in the hopper. You're releasing them out. You've thought through the strategy of like season one, and then we'll do some recordings, and we'll release season two, at a later time.
Yeah, we've got I think 120 episodes kind of charted out already. And not completely scripted or anything, but I have all the ideas lined out in like a list of guests that I want to have on for each episode. So I wanted to plan it out so that I could have like the next 2 years covered essentially without having to scramble at the last second to scrape the bottom of the barrel to find somebody as a guest.
Gotcha. So tell us more about this story-based content. What kind of was the impetus for that, and where did that idea come from?
Yeah, so there's a book out there called Building a Story Brand. It's by Donald Miller, and I highly recommend that everyone watching, listening to this, buy that book. It's fantastic. There's also, so Donald Miller also had a podcast called Building Your Story Brand, or the Story Brand Podcast. Now it's called Business Made Simple. Great podcast. But the Story Brand book was about all your marketing should tell a story. And a great story typically has three things. You've got a hero, a problem, and a guide. If you think about Star Wars, right? Luke Skywalker is the hero. The Empire, Darth Vader is kind of the problem or the villain, right? And then the guide is Yoda. And so Luke doesn't start off as the hero. He starts off as just this kid, and he kind of grows into it. Yoda takes him along as his guide, and he becomes the hero. The story brand concept is that you want to make your customer the hero in your marketing. I am not the hero. You guys are not the heroes. Your customer is the hero. You're the guide that gets them there. And so all of the story brand concept is about kind of taking your marketing and putting that angle on it to make your customer the hero. And so kind of based on that, I came up with the story for the podcast.
Gotcha. Very cool. Very cool. So that was a book recommendation, and I also recommend that book as well. Makes you think differently about how you're approaching content, and a lot less me focused and a lot more your client focused. So if you're watching this live, if you're listening to the recording, be sure to look that up. and I see how you're integrating it into this. The fact that you are recording it via video, the fact that you also have professional audio, it's out there. Yes, you're going to have value from this on the Shepherd Construction Advisor side. That's going to work nicely. But I just have a feeling that this is going to be a huge marketing tool on your custom home and remodeling side as well. Marketing is getting someone as a need. I want to do this full edition project to know, like, and trust you. And when somebody is in the market to take on a serious remodeling project and they get referred to you, they click on your website, they click on the podcast, it is not unusual for somebody to start listening to that and then start really getting into it. And all of a sudden, they've heard you talk and teach and educate and explain. They know your personality, they know your sense of humor, and they've listened to you for hours. Is that not an incredible competitive advantage? So as remodelers, as you're listening to this, what are you creating that's showing off your knowledge, your skills, your expertise in a way that people can consume that, can listen to that? Curtis is talking about this. I'm talking about this too. You think there's a strategy that I have that's similar to what Curtis is here? Give good ideas, build, know, like, and trust, give good ideas, help and educate. But through that process of doing that, there's a lot of relationship and know, like, and trust and leverage of I record it one time and people hear it for months and months or years and years. And when people reach out to me, they go, man, it feels like I know you. You sound just like you do on there. I already know your personality. There's a lot that happens through this. And Curtis, you're kind of on the beginning end of this, but that's a huge thing that you're going to reap the rewards of as you consistently do this. And that's another thing to keep in mind with content and marketing is the consistency of it is also very, very key. So I wanted to share that, encourage you with it, and also encourage others with it. What are you seeing as kind of the results? What are some of the kind of the long-term goals, or what are the results that you're hoping to see through this?
Yeah, I mean, the main objective is just to establish me or us as the expert in our market.
Yep.
And so even though I don't talk about Crafted, I mean, I mentioned in the podcast that I own Crafted, but I don't talk about Crafted in the podcast really. In fact, I have competitors on as my guests.
I saw that. Yeah.
Other builders here in Houston that I'm friends with. I mean, I hope that we're all friends with other builders in our markets because, I'm not going to get all the business in my market. Houston is a huge town, but even in a small town, you're not going to get all the business. It's good to have the relationships with other builders and remodelers. So I have them on as guests. Again, architects, designers, engineers, attorneys, all those people. And so it's all about establishing credibility, and it's establishing kind of me as the expert. And like you mentioned, also just generating a lot of content. Generating content for your marketing is just so key. And like you said, having right now, 8 episodes I've got out there right now. But once I've got 20, 30, 50, 100 episodes that are on YouTube, on a podcast, that's content that lives there forever. Yeah. I think the term that's used in the kind of the industry is evergreen content. It's there. It's always fresh. It's always something that people can refer back to. It stays there.
Look at you, Mr. Marketer. Like a professional marketer over there, yeah. Using buzzwords and everything.
Yeah. So just generating a boatload of content is going to boost your SEO, even if you don't do the video, even if you just do a podcast. And then when you post your podcast, you do a transcription of the podcast. There's free transcription services out there. There's apps, whatever, that you can use. But when you post that transcript on your website along with your podcast, that is like keyword rich stuff that you're posting. And that's going to really amp up your SEO and boost your website rankings too. But anyway, back to the previous point, really just establishing me as the expert or the authority on the topic in my market, I think is key, because when I'm talking to people with potential clients for Crafted, I often just mention, hey, I've got this podcast you should check out. Or I have this other consulting company that helps people with problems. they're like, "Oh, really? Wow, we want to hire the guy who helps other people
Yep.
because he knows the right way to do things." Or they listen to my podcast. They're like, "You know what? This guy knows what he's talking about. Let's hire him for our project, even if he costs more."
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. There's going to be an abundance of opportunities, and this goes for content in general. But when you're having a conversation related to a client about, the importance of the upfront design, and you're able to follow that up by saying, here's the video form and here's the audio form, where I just really dive in deep on the pros and cons and why and how you approach the design aspect. If you give that a watch, it's just going to help you guys be better prepared and really know the questions to ask. What a powerful sales tool that you have there. When you're going through and talking about, I'm interviewing architects, I'm interviewing designers. I like to refer to those folks as strategic partners, anybody else who shares the same ideal client as you do. And there's also the rule of reciprocity. The more you give to somebody, the more they feel kind of indebted to give back to you. When you are interviewing potential and good referral sources, people that are going to introduce you to, the people they're working with. Let's say it might be an architect or it might be a designer. What a wonderful relationship builder. And also the ability to there's just, have you seen any actual results or referrals as a result of this so far, or
Oh
strengthening
yeah.
of strategic partner relationships?
Oh yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
we get a lot of referrals from architects anyway. That's kind of been one of my big marketing pushes in the past. Um, but yeah, some guests that I've had on the podcast have already referred me work.
Yeah.
Uh, so let's see. I started recording these actually last summer, and they've kind of been marinating a little bit for a few months as we did production. But in the last few months, since I interviewed these people, I've gotten several referrals for projects.
Yeah. So already seeing those results. It was a few years ago now. It's probably been, time flies. It's probably been 3, maybe 4 years ago. I had one non-remodeling client that I was working with, an IT company in Connecticut. Gentleman's name is Ari Santiago, and we ended up going to Gary Vaynerchuk's office, VaynerMedia in New York City, and we did this day-long thing. It was pretty neat. Um, Say what you want about Gary V, cusses a lot, but he's got some good things to say.
That's
And
fantastic.
and we had I sat in this chair. It was kind of a good photo op. And he came in for about a 90-minute kind of time with us, and then there was 8 other businesses there. And the big takeaway for Ari and his IT company, they serve just small businesses providing IT services. Ari wanted to really focus in and work with more manufacturers in Connecticut. And Gary V's feedback for him is like, you got to host the party. You have to be the host of the party, and you need to start a podcast. It needs to be focused on manufacturing in Connecticut, and you interview without any expectation of leads, referrals, business. You interview them, let them tell their story, talk about what's working in their business and what they've tried, and workforce and automation, etc. Already took that to heart, and similar to the way you're approaching it, very professional production value. Week after week after week, he has interviewed manufacturers. All of a sudden, all of these ideal clients walk into IT Direct's office, now known as Compass MSP, walk into his office that does IT services, and they're so excited to be there. It had the ripple effect of that, the relationships of that, the camaraderie, the referrals from that, the business that is generated from that has been remarkable. If you look up Made in America with Ari Santiago, you'll find his podcast. He's been steady with it for a few years. And it's similar to what you're describing. As you continue to interview more and more people, as you continue to build more relationship with them, it's going to be wonderful for business. And what's interesting about a podcast, it can be a tad overwhelming. Uh-oh, my boy Curtis just disappeared. Hopefully he'll come back. If you're watching this live, which some of you are, if you just comment, Kyle, we still hear you, but Curtis kind of disappeared there. But he's the amount of content. You can take little 90 minutes, 90-second clips, little 60-second clip here. It's going to be tremendous content for his remodeling business. Cool. Well, it's almost like Curtis is, we're listening live. We still hear you. Okay, cool. So I'm still here. Curtis disappeared. We're kind of starting to wind down anyway, but I bet you he's going to pop back up. Maybe that Wi-Fi and internet connection in Houston is a little weak today. But you're hearing a pretty interesting story. The goal of today's podcast was to say, hey, here's kind of a different idea. What if you hosted a podcast? What if you are a remodeler who actually hosted these conversations? I think sometimes when it comes to content, you guys get overwhelmed by it. I don't know what to say. What you say is the exact stuff that you so eloquently and professionally say when you are meeting with a prospect. You are very comfortable talking one-on-one or one-on-two with homeowners about the remodeling process, things to look out for, approaches to take, educating them on such a wide variety of the process and products, and guiding them. That same stuff that you talk to them about is wonderful content. Whether you go all out professional and create podcasts, whether you grab your iPhone and face it at you and you create 60, 90-second videos that are teaching in 2023, in 2025, in 2028, you as a remodeler putting on your content creator hat and creating more content is going to become more and more important. And you have to start somewhere. So you're hearing how Curtis is approaching it, how he's just thinking through what are my topics for my podcast. It's just going to be start at the beginning and start teaching and educating and going on through, and make it interesting, make it story based. Well, he kind of disappeared, and it doesn't look like he's come back yet. I'm guessing my boy Curtis is probably freaking out right now, going, what happens? But I think we have mission accomplished as far as giving you guys some value on today's show. So we'll give him one more minute here, and then we'll wrap up. But you heard a kind of a compelling case on this. I'd be interested. Feel free to reach out to me, private message me, email me, Kyle@remodelersontherise.com. What's a takeaway they have? Or if you're watching this live, what's a takeaway you have in the comments? And I'm pretty impressed by, it's one thing to kind of do things, a little bit. I get it kind of started. It's another thing to really make the commitment and investment that he's made in the technology and the setup. He's going to do this. One, he proved that he's going to do it by doing it just in his own office. And now that he's made this investment, he's really going to do it. And then I was talking to him before we started on the air. I think he's got another little side hustle business as well. There's a lot of businesses who want to create content, who want to interview folks, who want to start podcasts, and he's got a wonderful setup there that he can rent out. There's a great little podcast studio in the downtown area of my business called the Speakeasy Podcast Network, and that's what they do. So that's another angle for him. So hopefully you got some takeaways from the show today. That was Curtis Lawson, your project shepherd. He also runs Crafted Custom Homes. You heard his strategy. You heard some ideas related to creating content. Again, marketing is getting someone who has a need to know, like, and trust you. And content can be a tremendous way of doing that. Analyze what I'm doing here. I create a lot of content on the podcast. There's no like and trust being built. And it's a wonderful way to do it. It feels really good to be teaching and helping. And as an offshoot of that, have that be a wonderful way of you getting introduced to people and building know, like, and trust and helping you make sales as well. It's a great approach. All right. So that's it, folks. I'm going to go call Curtis and hear what happened. Hopefully it was just an internet issue. And until next time, keep working hard. Keep focused on the most important thing that you need to focus on today. Eat your frog, the most important thing you need to get done that you're most likely to put off. Focus in, make progress today, and realize that brick by brick, as you continue to make progress daily, you're much stronger and better and a better business owner than you were 6 months ago. Keep on that journey. Keep moving forward. You got this. Catch y'all later.